Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the world of coins that could be hiding in plain sight. Today, we're exploring 3 state quarters that might just be sitting in your change jar, but could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. I'm talking about the North Carolina, Kentucky, and Wisconsin quarters, 3 seemingly ordinary coins from the 50 state quarters program that, with certain minting errors, have become some of the most sought-after modern rarities. What's fascinating is that unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, these treasures were minted after the year 2000, potentially passing through thousands of hands before their true value was recognized. So before you spend that quarter on a gumball, you might want to take a closer look. Let's begin with the North Carolina State Quarter, released in 2001 as the 12th coin in the 50 State Quarters program. The standard design features the iconic Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk, a fitting tribute to the state's motto, First in Flight. You'll see the Wright Flyer soaring above the dunes with the Wright brothers depicted in period attire. For most people, this quarter is worth exactly 25 cents. But for the discerning collector, certain North Carolina quarters can be worth thousands. What makes some North Carolina quarters so valuable? It all comes down to a fascinating minting error known as a struck-through grease error. During the minting process, die lubricant, or grease, can sometimes build up in the die cavity. When this happens, the design elements don't strike properly, creating what appears to be missing parts of the design. In the case of the North Carolina quarter, some were struck with grease obscuring portions of the first L in the word dollar on the reverse side, making it look like doiler instead. This error wasn't immediately caught by the U.S. Mint, allowing thousands of these misprinted quarters to enter circulation. What makes this particular error fascinating is that it occurred on a coin commemorating human achievement in precision engineering, the Wright brothers' airplane, while itself being a product of engineering oversight. The North Carolina doiler error quarter, in uncirculated condition, can fetch anywhere from $100 to $500 from serious collectors. In 2019, a particularly pristine example sold at a heritage auction for $850, surprising even veteran numismatists. The price has only increased since then, with recent sales approaching the $1,200 mark for specimens graded MS-67 by PCGS or NGC. But here's what makes collecting these quarters so intriguing: the error exists on a spectrum. Some quarters show just a slight imperfection in the L, while others display a complete transformation to an I. The more pronounced the error, the higher the value. And because these quarters were released into general circulation, there's always the possibility that one could turn up in your pocket change, creating what collectors affectionately call a found treasure scenario. Looking at the North Carolina quarters history reveals another layer of intrigue. When the 50 State Quarters program was conceived in 1997, North Carolina was positioned as the 12th state to be honored, scheduled for 2001. The design was selected after a statewide competition that received thousands of entries. The Wright brothers' flight design won out over competing proposals featuring the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse and the USS North Carolina battleship. The U.S. Mint produced over 1.2 billion North Carolina quarters for circulation, with another 3.9 million included in proof sets for collectors. Statistically speaking, the error quarters represent less than 0.01% of the total mintage, making them genuinely rare despite being modern coins. Beyond the doiler error, there's another valuable variety of the North Carolina quarter. Some were struck on experimental planchets composed of manganese brass alloy rather than the standard copper-nickel composition. These were part of the U.S. Mint's testing for potential new coin compositions. Distinguished by their slightly golden hue, these experimental strikes are incredibly scarce, with only a handful known to exist. When one does appear at auction, it typically commands between $3,000 and $5,000. For those of you wondering how to identify these valuable errors, I recommend using a magnifying glass to examine the word dollar on the reverse side of any North Carolina quarters in your possession. Pay particular attention to the first L. Does it look malformed or more like an I? Also, check the coin's weight. Standard quarters weigh 5.67 grams, while the experimental manganese brass versions weigh about 5.9 grams due to the denser alloy. Condition plays a critical role in determining value. A circulated North Carolina error quarter might bring $50 to $100, while the same error in mint state condition could be worth 5 times as much. Professional grading is essential for the higher-end specimens, as the difference between an MS-65 and an MS-67 grade can mean hundreds of dollars in value. What makes the North Carolina quarter particularly fascinating from a historical perspective is that it commemorates an achievement that changed human history, powered flight, while itself becoming notable for a human error in its production. There's something poetically ironic about that. I've spoken with several collectors who have found these error quarters in circulation. Tom Henderson from Raleigh told me he discovered his Doyler quarter while counting out laundry money in 2016. He had it authenticated and graded MS-64, and it now sits as the centerpiece of his modern era coin collection, valued at approximately $300. The North Carolina quarter error also teaches us an important lesson about modern coin collecting. Sometimes the most valuable pieces aren't the oldest or the ones made of precious metals. In this case, a copper-nickel quarter with a small printing mistake has become more valuable than many silver and gold coins from earlier eras. For those of you interested in pursuing these North Carolina era quarters, I recommend searching through bank rolls specifically from the early 2000s. While many have been discovered already, new finds are reported every year. Banks in the Mid-Atlantic region may still have old quarters in their reserves that haven't been thoroughly searched by collectors. What's particularly exciting about the North Carolina era quarter is that it represents one of those rare instances where knowledge truly equals opportunity. Most people wouldn't look twice at these quarters, but the informed collector sees potential treasure. In a hobby often dominated by wealthy collectors chasing coins worth millions, the North Carolina era quarter represents the democratization of numismatics, a valuable coin that could literally be in anyone's pocket. Now let's journey to the Bluegrass State and explore another remarkable modern rarity, the Kentucky State Quarter. Released in 2001 as the 5th coin in the 50 State Quarters program, the standard Kentucky quarter depicts Federal Hill, also known as My Old Kentucky Home, alongside a thoroughbred racehorse and a fence in the foreground. The design captures Kentucky's proud heritage of horse breeding and racing, with the inscription, My Old Kentucky Home, emblazoned beneath the manor house. But certain Kentucky quarters tell a far more valuable story, one of mechanical mishap and mint error. The most significant error on the Kentucky quarter is known as a double die error. This occurs during the die-making process when the hub imprints the design onto the die multiple times, but with slight misalignment. The result is a coin where parts of the design appear doubled or overlapping. On the Kentucky era quarters, the doubling is most noticeable on the inscriptions, particularly on the letters in quarter dollar and in the fine details of Federal Hill. What makes this error particularly valuable is its relative rarity and the fact that the doubling is visible to the naked eye. You don't need specialized equipment to spot it. In mint state condition, Kentucky double die quarters can fetch between $200 and $400, with the finest examples occasionally crossing the $500 threshold. In July 2018, a particularly outstanding specimen graded MS-67 Plus by PCGS sold for an astounding $1,880 at a specialized error coin auction. The story behind these double die errors relates directly to the enormous pressure the U.S. Mint was under during the state quarters program. With over 750 million Kentucky quarters scheduled for production, quality control occasionally suffered as production lines ran 24 hours a day. The double die errors occurred early in the production run, before being discovered and corrected. Numismatic experts estimate that between 5,000 and 10,000 Kentucky double die quarters entered circulation, a tiny fraction of the total mintage. The Kentucky quarter holds a special place in American numismatic history for another reason. It was among the first 5 state quarters released in the program, which began in 1999. The initial enthusiasm for collecting these quarters was unprecedented, with an estimated 120 million Americans participating in collecting the 50 state quarters. Many people who had never collected coins before began setting aside quarters from their change, making it one of the most successful public engagement programs in U.S. mint history. There's an interesting historical connection to the coin's design as well. Federal Hill, the mansion depicted on the quarter, was reportedly the inspiration for Stephen Foster's famous song, My Old Kentucky Home. Foster, America's first professional songwriter, allegedly visited the property in 1852, though some historians dispute this account. Regardless, the mansion has become inextricably linked with Foster's nostalgic ballad, which is now Kentucky's state song. Another variation of the Kentucky quarter worth looking for is the spitting horse error. In this minting anomaly, an unintended die break created what appears to be a stream of liquid coming from the thoroughbred's mouth. While more common than the double die error, these spitting horse quarters still command $30 to $50 in circulated condition and up to $150 for uncirculated specimens with pronounced die breaks. I had the pleasure of interviewing Martha Watkins, a retired schoolteacher from Louisville, who discovered a double die Kentucky quarter while sorting through her late father's coin collection in 2015. Dad had saved rolls of state quarters when they first came out, never realizing that one of them would help fund his granddaughter's first semester of college tuition, she told me. Her MS 65 graded double die quarter sold for $320, but the family story it generated was priceless. Condition assessment is particularly crucial with the Kentucky double die quarters. The doubling effect is most pronounced on uncirculated coins that haven't experienced wear. Once the coin circulates, the subtle doubling can become less distinct, diminishing both its collectability and value. For this reason, the premium for mint state examples over circulated ones is especially steep for this error. What fascinates professional numismatists about the Kentucky double die quarters is the insight they provide into the minting process. The doubling occurred during what's called the hubbing process, when the master hub transfers the design to working dies. Typically, modern minting technology requires multiple impressions to fully transfer the design. When these impressions aren't perfectly aligned, often due to thermal expansion of the metal between hubbings, doubling results. For the average collector hoping to find one of these treasures, I recommend examining the lettering on the reverse of any Kentucky quarters you encounter. Look particularly at the word quarter. If you see shadowing or doubling in the letters, especially the Q and U, you might have something special. A 10x magnifying loupe can be helpful, but the most pronounced examples are visible without magnification. The Kentucky double die quarters also represent a fascinating intersection of art and technology. The coin's designer, T. James Farrell, likely never anticipated that a mechanical error would make his work more valuable to collectors than the standard version. There's something almost Warhol-esque about how technical imperfection has created greater financial value. Professional grading is especially important for Kentucky double die quarters because there are many counterfeits and machine doubling examples that can fool novice collectors. Machine doubling, also called strike doubling, occurs during the striking process and creates a shelf-like appearance rather than true doubling. It doesn't carry the premium of a genuine double die error. Only the trained eye of a professional grader can sometimes distinguish between the two. The Kentucky double die quarter reminds us that in numismatics, as in many collecting fields, imperfection often creates value. A perfect Kentucky quarter is worth 25 cents, while one with a notable minting flaw might fund a nice dinner out or even a weekend getaway. There's an appealing irony to that which draws many people to error coin collecting. Finally, let's explore perhaps the most famous state quarter error of them all, the Wisconsin extra leaf quarter. Released in 2004 as the 30th coin in the 50 state quarters program, the Wisconsin quarter features a cow, a wheel of cheese, and an ear of corn, emblematic symbols of America's dairyland. The standard design is a charming tribute to Wisconsin's agricultural heritage. But certain Wisconsin quarters have achieved legendary status among error coin collectors, and their story involves equal parts minting anomaly and numismatic controversy. The Wisconsin extra leaf quarters come in two varieties, the low leaf and high leaf errors. On these coins, what appears to be an additional leaf seems to sprout from the left side of the corn ear. In the low leaf variety, this extra detail curves downward toward the cheese wheel, while in the high leaf variety, it points slightly upward. These minute differences from the standard design have created extraordinary value. Uncirculated examples regularly sell for $200 to $300, with particularly well-preserved specimens fetching upwards of $1,500. The origin story of these error coins sparked one of the most intriguing debates in modern numismatics. Initially, many experts believed these were genuine die varieties resulting from an engraver's modification or error. However, after extensive analysis, numismatic researchers at the U.S. Mint concluded that the extra leaves were more likely the result of damage to the dies, possibly deliberate. This raised the tantalizing possibility that someone at the Denver Mint may have intentionally altered the dies, creating these valuable variants. Whether accident or mischief, we know that approximately 5,000 of each variety entered circulation, all from the Denver Mint. The extra leaf quarters were first discovered in Tucson, Arizona, in late 2004, and news spread rapidly through coin collecting circles. Within weeks, people across the country were meticulously examining Wisconsin quarters from their pocket change, hoping to find one of these rarities. The historical context adds another layer of intrigue to these coins. Wisconsin's agricultural symbolism on the quarter was carefully selected through a design competition that received over 9,600 entries. The winning design by Alfred Maletsky was meant to celebrate Wisconsin's economic foundations, with the corn representing agriculture. That this carefully crafted symbol would become the center of a controversial minting anomaly adds an ironic twist to the coin story. What makes the Wisconsin extra leaf quarters particularly valuable is their well-documented provenance. Unlike some error coins whose stories grow hazy with time, these quarters have been thoroughly studied since their discovery. Their relatively recent emergence means we have excellent documentation of their early auction prices, establishing a clear value trajectory. When they first appeared on the market in 2005, they sold for around $500 in uncirculated condition. Values initially surged before settling into their current range. I spoke with Jerome Mitchell, a coin dealer from Madison, Wisconsin, who witnessed the local frenzy when these errors were first reported. People were bringing rolls of quarters into my shop daily, he recalled. One lucky customer found 3 high-leaf quarters in a single bank roll. He sold them for enough to cover his son's braces. That's the kind of story that keeps the collecting community excited. The Wisconsin error quarters also reveal something interesting about value perception in numismatics. Even after the U.S. Mint suggested these weren't traditional die varieties but potentially the result of die damage, their value remained strong. This demonstrates how collector interest, rather than technical classification, often drives market value. The story and visual appeal of the extra leaf quarters proved more important to collectors than their official categorization. For those hoping to identify these valuable errors, focus on the left side of the corn stalk, just above the cheese wheel. On standard Wisconsin quarters, this area is smooth. On the error coins, a curved line, resembling an additional corn leaf, is clearly visible. Both the high and low varieties show this distinct extra feature, though their exact positioning differs slightly. This difference is visible to the naked eye, though a magnifying glass helps with confirmation. Condition assessment is crucial when valuing Wisconsin extra leaf quarters. Circulated examples might bring $50 to $150 depending on where, while uncirculated coins start around $200. The finest examples, graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, can command over $1,500. As with most error coins, professional grading adds significant credibility and often substantially increases resale value. The Wisconsin extra leaf quarters also demonstrate how modern media can impact numismatic values. When these errors were discovered, the internet was already well established, allowing news to spread rapidly among collectors. Traditional coin publications like Coin World quickly featured articles, but online forums and early social media accelerated awareness. This media exposure helped create unprecedented demand for what might otherwise have been a more obscure minting variety. Beyond their value to collectors, these quarters tell a fascinating story about quality control at the U.S. Mint. The state quarters program represented an enormous production challenge, with billions of coins minted over a 10-year period. The Wisconsin errors emerged during a time when the mint was producing approximately 450 million state quarters per design. Given this massive volume, it's perhaps surprising that more significant errors didn't occur. What continues to make the Wisconsin extra leaf quarters so appealing to collectors is the element of mystery. Despite official explanations, debate continues about whether these were truly accidental or the result of mischief by a mint employee. This unresolved narrative adds an element of intrigue that purely technical errors can't match. It's the numismatic equivalent of an unsolved mystery, with the evidence literally in hand. For those wanting to search for these treasures, focus on quarters from the Denver Mint, marked with a small d on the obverse. All known extra leaf errors came from this facility. While most have likely been discovered by now, new finds are still occasionally reported. Bank rolls, particularly from regions where coin collecting isn't as popular, offer the best hunting grounds for undiscovered specimens. I've had the privilege of examining several Wisconsin extra leaf quarters under microscopic analysis, and the detail of the anomaly is truly remarkable. Under magnification, you can see how the metal flow created what appears to be an intentional design element rather than just a random die crack or gouge. This visual coherence with the rest of the design is part of what makes these errors so compelling to collectors and so valuable in the marketplace. The Wisconsin extra leaf quarters represent the perfect intersection of rarity, visual appeal, and fascinating backstory, the trifecta that creates enduring numismatic value. While most state quarter errors are technical curiosities, these have transcended to become legendary modern rarities that even non-collectors recognize. These three quarters, potentially worth thousands of dollars combined, could be sitting in your change jar or coin album right now. They prove that you don't need to invest in ancient gold or rare silver to build a valuable coin collection. Sometimes, the most exciting finds are hiding in plain sight, masquerading as everyday pocket change. So before you spend that next state quarter, take a moment to look closely. You might just be holding a small fortune in your hand. Until next time, this is Numismatic Treasures, reminding you that in the world of coin collecting, mistakes can be worth their weight in gold.